He's just an incompetent newbie, so you can ignore him.
Nathan looked at Tom with a puzzled expression, but he didn't seem to care and continued talking.
This guy can't get any job done no matter what I give him. And John joined us at his age and doesn't even have a position. It's hilarious, right?
Tom kept belittling me, probably to boost his own evaluation. Tom, please, let's get on with the business meeting. Thinking I felt embarrassed, he smirked and started looking down on me even more.
This guy is the epitome of incompetence. His education and work history are pathetic. He's a completely worthless employee.
Finally, my patience snapped, and I was about to speak up in my defense. But before I could, Nathan started talking to Tom. After this, Tom would be plunged into the depths of despair by a single word from Nathan. My name is John Wilson, a 47-year-old man. I currently work as a regular employee in the sales department at a small brokerage firm, Thompson Securities Inc. Actually, I've only been working at this company for a week. To be honest, I've always been an outstanding student, achieving excellent grades from elementary school through college. After graduating from college, I got a job at a bank and worked diligently until recently, holding various positions. I wasn't considering a career change, but about a month ago, I was headhunted by my current employer, Thompson Securities. As I listened to their pitch, I decided to take on a new challenge after some thought. So, a few days ago, I joined Thompson Securities in the sales department. Even though it's in the same financial field as my previous job, the nature of the work is different, so I'm still struggling to learn the ropes after a few days. However, I'm enjoying the challenge and looking forward to getting used to the workplace and tasks, hoping to acquire new skills while cooperating with my colleagues. I have no complaints about the job itself, but I'm facing significant issues with human relations. The source of my troubles is my boss in the same department, Tom. As a department head, he's excellent at his job. However, he lacks the trust of those around him and has a habit of looking down on newcomers. When a newbie joins, he dismisses them as incompetent and treats them with contempt, dumping menial tasks on them without proper guidance. Many can't stand his attitude and end up quitting, leaving the department perpetually understaffed. But he remains indifferent, saying, "It can't be helped if the newcomers are useless, right?" His colleagues are appalled by his behavior, but due to his position, they can't call him out and can only give him cold stares. I recently joined the company as a new hire. I'm the only newbie in the sales department. Naturally, I became the target of Tom's attacks.
Hey, you joined the company recently, didn't you? We're around the same age, aren't we? I don't care about your job history, but I bet you haven't had much of a life. Poor guy.
As I handled some menial tasks, Tom sneered at me with a smirk. Confused and forced to give a strained smile, I could only say, "Yeah, well, that might be true," and let the conversation slide. Tom seemed dissatisfied with my nonchalant attitude and gradually intensified his mocking remarks.
What kind of reaction is that? As your boss, I'm kindly talking to you, you know? Well, since you're obviously incompetent, make sure you handle the menial tasks properly. Taking on a big job is 100 years too early for you, so be prepared for that.
With that, he returned to his workstation. From that day on, Tom only assigned me menial tasks. When others tried to help me or guide me through tasks, Tom would deliberately intervene.
This incompetent newbie is definitely not ready for that job. If you need help, ask another employee. Don't take the initiative to kindly guide him. Just focus on your own work.
He made sure I wasn't given any tasks. A month passed, and I continued doing menial tasks without receiving any guidance from Tom or other employees. So I decided to ask him directly for some instruction. Tom, I'd like to start taking on tasks other than menial ones. Could you please assign me some work? Even simple tasks would be fine. But Tom instantly rejected my request.
Don't be ridiculous. There's no job I can trust you with. Just handle the menial tasks properly. If you have complaints, you should quit the company.
He laughed and waved his hand dismissively at me. Undeterred, I persistently asked him for work in the following days. However, he continued to refuse. And finally, he snapped, "You're annoying. Get out of my way, useless." Realizing it was pointless to keep asking, I resigned myself to quietly return to my desk and continue doing menial tasks. Despite Tom's ongoing harassment, I believed that one day I would get a chance to demonstrate my abilities. So I kept working. One day, while I was handling simple tasks, Tom unexpectedly brought me some work.
It's about time you learn some real work. It's troublesome if you remain a burden forever.
His slightly smirking expression bothered me, but seeing it as a chance to prove myself, I agreed without my hesitation. Following Tom's instructions, I completed my task and submitted the documents to him for review a few days later. I finished preparing the documents. Please take a look. Handing over the completed documents, Tom took them without a word. But suddenly, he started yelling at me.
There's not a single piece of essential information in this. How can you not handle something so simple? You're truly incompetent.
Without even checking, he pointed out mistakes in my document. But I made this exactly according to your instructions, Tom.
Don't make excuses. You created this document, didn't you? Instead of blaming others, hurry up and redo it.
I explained that I had followed his directions, but he continued to unjustly berate me and ordered me to redo the document. Feeling frustrated, I slumped back to my seat. Then, a female colleague next to me spoke up.
Are you okay, John? Tom often dumps work on newbies suddenly and yells at them unfairly. He just wants to harass you. I wish I could have told you earlier.
She kindly explained his true intentions. Apparently, Tom frequently assigned work whimsically to induce mistakes, and then yelled at the newcomers. Due to this harassment, half of the new employees in the sales department quit and left the company. Having witnessed this many times, some colleagues secretly warn newbies about Tom's harassment. However, if Tom finds out, he bullies both the informant and the newcomer, isolating them. Fearing his retaliation, no one dares to help the newbies anymore, and they can only watch Tom's interactions with sighs of frustration. Understanding the situation, I reassured the female colleague, "I'll be okay," and set out to redo the document to complete the task I was given. Even when I submitted it the next day, Tom scolded me.
There's another mistake. How many times do I have to tell you? You're completely useless, you moron.
For several days, I repeatedly redid the document and got scolded until I finally completed the task a week later. However, Tom said, "It took you several days to finish such a simple task. I guess it's still too early for an incompetent newbie like you. From tomorrow, you'll go back to doing menial tasks and assign me more menial work again. I felt anger at his unfairness and couldn't help but voice my accumulated frustrations. Let me just say, the reason it took so long was because of your faulty instructions. I'm a newbie, so I still haven't grasped the work process. If all the answers to my questions are wrong, anyone would get disheartened. The employees around us turned pale and focused their attention on me after my rebuttal. Tom, shocked at being talked back to, froze with a bewildered expression before his face contorted with rage.
Who do you think you're talking to? You've got some nerve talking back to your boss, newbie. What are you, some big shot? If you're so dissatisfied, just quit now. Or better yet, I can report to the CEO and get you fired. Huh?
Enraged by my defiance, Tom refused to acknowledge his own fault, spewing insults and ultimately threatening me, filled more with exasperation than fear. I stared at him in disbelief. I wanted to argue back, but worried that the situation would worsen. So I remained silent and continued doing the menial tasks as instructed. The unfairness of it all was overwhelming, and I honestly felt like giving up. But I renewed my resolve not to succumb to his persistent harassment and dedicated myself to my work. A month later, Tom suddenly said, "I'll let you observe a business meeting," and forcibly took me out of the office to a certain place. We headed to the headquarters of a major financial institution, Grandview Bank, which had been dealing with our company for years. Though Tom half dragged me there, it was a rare opportunity to experience a business meeting in the current situation. We arrived at Grandview Bank's headquarters and were shown to the meeting room where the discussion would take place. Inside were their CEO, Nathan Murphy, the account manager, and a young employee. We exchanged greetings and took our seats. Nathan looked at me and kindly started a conversation.
Thank you for coming today. Here to observe the meeting, I presume?
But Tom immediately cut in between me and Nathan, saying, "He's just an incompetent newbie, so you can ignore him." Nathan looked puzzled at Tom, but Tom, unfazed, continued speaking.
This guy is really hopeless. He can't handle any task he's given. And John here joined us at his age and isn't even in a position. It's hilarious, right?
Tom kept belittling me, probably to elevate his own standing. However, at this rate, not only would his reputation suffer, but the company's image would also be tarnished. As expected, Nathan and the others were all left gaping in astonishment, staring at Tom. I quickly leaned in and whispered to Tom, "Tom, please, let's get started with the meeting." Thinking I was embarrassed, Tom smirked and started belittling me even more.
On top of that, this guy even talked back to me, his boss. Can you believe it? Such behavior is unthinkable for a newbie. He's a real handful, causing so much trouble for us.
Ignoring my caution, he dealt the final blow.
This guy is the epitome of incompetence. His education and work history are pathetic. He's a completely worthless employee.
Tom blatantly called me incompetent, without caring how others perceived him. I clenched my fists in anger. Why did I have to put up with this? Had I done something terrible to deserve his hatred? Frowning in discomfort, I saw Tom smiling in satisfaction. My patience finally snapped, and I opened my mouth to argue back. However, before I could, Nathan began speaking to Tom. With one sentence, Nathan would plunge him into despair.
How can you say such things so casually about someone?
What?
Tom tilted his head in confusion at Nathan's exasperation. Nathan, looking surprised, turned to me with a puzzled expression.
John, you haven't made it public yet, have you?
I nodded quietly in response to his question. Naturally, Tom, not understanding, demanded an explanation from me.
Hey, what's going on, John? What do you mean by public? Are you hiding something from me?
Persistently questioned, I sighed deeply and reluctantly explained. Actually, I'm not just an ordinary employee. The CEO of Thompson Securities invited me to join the company to become the next CEO. So I left my previous job as a banker.
What?
Tom, unable to believe it, tilted his head even further. When I was still working as a banker, holding a position and performing my duties, Thompson Securities had been one of our clients. Though I wasn't in the sales department, so I didn't directly interact with them. One day while I was working as usual, a representative from Thompson Securities visited our bank. Apparently, they had business with me and, after being shown to a reception room, suddenly made a proposal.
I apologize for the suddenness, but could you meet our CEO in secret? Our CEO reviewed your background and is very impressed. He really wants to meet you, so we came to see you today.
What? The CEO of Thompson Securities wants to meet me? I was surprised by the proposal and felt a bit wary. However, thinking it could lead to my next job, I decided to accept the offer and secretly meet with the CEO of the company. A few days later, I went to Thompson Securities and met the CEO. As soon as we met, he made an astonishing request.
I've heard about you from our account managers. I took the liberty to investigate your background. I want you to take over my company. You would have to quit your current bank job, but it's not a bad offer, is it?
What? You want me to become the CEO of Thompson Securities? I was so surprised that my eyes nearly popped out of my head. Thompson Securities had been led by the current CEO's family for generations. But since he had no children, he couldn't find a successor. However, when he noticed my background and liked what he saw, he immediately decided that it would be fine to entrust Thompson Securities to me. Although I wasn't dissatisfied with my current job, I felt it was boring and wanted to take on new challenges. So I thought this was a good opportunity and accepted his request. But my experience was in banking, and I had no experience in a securities company. I asked to spend my first year as a trainee to get to know Thompson Securities better. I'd like to spend the first year as a sales department employee to observe the company's atmosphere and environment. Since I have no experience in a securities company, I'd like to learn a lot before becoming CEO. The CEO was happy to agree, saying, "As long as you accept, that's fine." So 2 months ago, I had an interview. Of course, no one else in the company knew about this. So the interviewer didn't know I was a future CEO candidate and hired me. When I was assigned to the sales department, no one knew my true identity or background and treated me as a new employee. Naturally, Tom didn't know either and assumed my background was miserable, looking down on me as incompetent. After I finished explaining, he turned pale and started trembling.
What? There's no way I can believe such a story. It's all nonsense. You're not going to scare me.
Nathan was the one who rebutted his denial.
No, I've known about this for a while. We've already greeted each other. When John visited our company today, we already knew each other.
What?
Tom was shocked to find out that Nathan and I were already acquainted. Before joining the company, I had been introduced to Nathan, who was on good terms with the CEO, and we had already exchanged greetings. Therefore, when we met today, we already recognized each other, and he knew I was the next CEO candidate. Hearing this from Nathan, Tom finally realized the truth and turned even paler. However, Tom now began to doubt my background.
Wait a minute. You're supposed to be incompetent, right? How can someone like you be the next CEO? That's absurd.
Tom shouted, and I sighed deeply in exasperation. Aren't you mistaken about something? What part of me did you see and decide I was incompetent? You haven't seen me in action on sales calls or leading projects, have you?
Well,
When I questioned him, he began to stammer. No wonder. He had just assumed I was incompetent without any basis. While Tom didn't know my capabilities, Nathan did.
What are you talking about? John is an exceptional person. He graduated at the top of his class from a renowned school and even spent time overseas, right?
I nodded at his words. Tom muttered, "Huh?" in disbelief. Actually, although it's embarrassing to say, I've always excelled in both academics and sports, consistently ranking at the top. I attended a prestigious integrated school from elementary through high school and studied hard, graduating at the top. I was accepted into an elite university abroad and spent several years overseas. I also traveled abroad for leisure, picking up multiple languages, which greatly benefited me in my first banking job. Up until I resigned, I was serving as deputy branch manager, and it was this background that caught the CEO's attention at Thompson Securities. As I explained, Tom listened in stunned silence, mouth agape.
why didn't you tell us about your background? Were you hiding your talents to make a fool of me? This is outrageous.
He began to lash out with paranoid accusations, and I quickly countered. Tom, you never showed any interest in my background, did you? I wouldn't just go around talking about it myself. Besides, because of you, I haven't been taught any real work, so I couldn't even show my abilities. Nathan immediately picked up on my words.
Haven't been taught any work yet? What do you mean? You've been here for 2 months, right?
Tom started to panic at his question.
Oh no, it's not a big deal really. Don't worry about it. Now, let's get started on the business meeting, shall we?
He tried to deflect and forcefully steer the conversation towards the business meeting. But I continued speaking. Actually, since I joined, I've only been assigned menial tasks. Apparently, I'm incompetent. He outright told me there was no work he could trust me with. At my words, Tom hastily covered his mouth with both hands. But I brushed his hands away and continued detailing Tom's harassment. I revealed how he looked down on me as incompetent, wouldn't assign me any real tasks, and only gave me simple jobs to intentionally cause mistakes. Nathan's anger grew visibly with each revelation.
Tom, is this the kind of person you are? I'm extremely disappointed. I can't imagine working with a company that harasses its new employees. We should call off this business deal.
He suggested canceling the deal, directing his comment at Tom. Tom's face turned ashen, and he started to panic.
Wait, please. This is all lies. He's just trying to get back at me. Don't believe him.
Despite his desperate plea, Nathan's eyes blazed with anger.
Indeed, John is a recent hire, and you've known him as a client representative for a long time. But just a moment ago, you openly belittled him in front of us. Seeing that, I can't possibly believe anything you say.
Only now did Tom realize how his actions had appeared to others a few minutes earlier, and he lowered his head in regret. I sighed audibly, as if to say, "I told you so." Tom noticed my attitude but had bigger concerns.
But this deal is crucial for our performance. If it falls through, I don't know what our CEO will say. I was even promised a promotion soon. Please, for the sake of the company and myself, don't cancel the deal.
Tom raised his head and tried to persuade Nathan, mixing in his true feelings. However, Nathan was not about to be swayed.
Isn't that all just for your own convenience? I feel sorry for your CEO, but this time I must decline. Depending on the circumstances, continuing our business relationship might be difficult. There's a credibility issue. We can't risk having our company and employees affected.
Nathan expressed his thoughts with a hint of disappointment. Tom, looking like his world had ended, lowered his head again in despair. Honestly, it would be satisfying to see him get scolded harshly by the CEO if this deal were to be canceled. But our company would soon be mine, and it would be a waste to lose a long-standing client and harm our performance. So I made a proposal that would serve both as a counter to Tom and benefit the company. I wouldn't be happy to lose the opportunity to work with your bank, Nathan. How about this? I'll fire Tom as soon as I become the CEO. That way, you won't have to worry about a troublesome person anymore.
What are you saying? Don't be ridiculous.
Tom immediately objected, clearly not convinced.
This is no joke. Why should I be fired? Other than harassing you, I haven't done anything wrong. Just because you have a grudge against me, that's too much.
He protested with a straight face, but I couldn't help but laugh. You say that, but haven't you been embezzling company funds? On top of that, you've been using the embezzled money for leisure during sales rounds and stealing sales results from other employees. Pointing this out, Tom's face turned pale with shock, and he began to tremble with fear. I wasn't just doing menial tasks every day. I had been observing the company carefully to gather useful information for my future role. During that time, I had witnessed Tom embezzling and slacking off during work hours. There were also numerous testimonies from other employees. And though I couldn't verify all of them, there seemed to be plenty of skeletons in Tom's closet. When I become the CEO, I will immediately start an investigation and have you fired. This isn't revenge. It's a justified decision for the company's sake. As for the embezzlement, I don't think it will become a police matter, but you will have to repay the full amount. When I made this declaration, Tom, realizing the gravity of the situation, began to grovel.
Oh no, John. I mean, future CEO. Please, you must be joking. You, kind and capable as you are, would never leave an employee out in the cold, right?
He smiled nervously, but I firmly shook my head. No, as you assumed, I am indeed incompetent, so I will take the appropriate actions without hesitation. But first, I need to report all of this to the current CEO. By the time I become CEO, you might already be gone. I said this with a slight laugh, and Tom's face turned ashen.
No, please. Don't do this. I still have a mortgage. I have a wife. If I lose my job now, she'll divorce me, and I'll be left to pay the mortgage alone. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Tom cried and begged for forgiveness, but I turned away. Nathan, could we postpone this meeting instead of canceling it? I assure you that I will address this issue immediately when I return to the office. When I bowed my head and asked, Nathan nodded and smiled, saying, "Okay."
This is ridiculous. I've apologized so much. Why won't you forgive me, you heartless people?
Tom, now desperate, lashed out in anger. But everyone present, including Nathan, was visibly unimpressed. This isn't ridiculous. It's a just punishment. And it's not personal. As the future CEO, I believe firing you is in the best interest of the company's future.
I agree. Even if I were the CEO of Thompson Securities, I would have done the same and taken immediate action. Tom, you need to reflect on your actions.
We both stood by our statements. Rather than getting angry, Tom seemed to have no energy left. He collapsed weakly to the floor. Sitting there, I bowed once again to everyone from the client company, leaving Tom, who was now depressed, behind, and walked out of the reception room alone. Tom, unable to move due to the shock, remained on the floor crying for a while, under the cold stares of Nathan and the others. Later, he chased after me and repeatedly apologized. But of course, I didn't forgive him. When I returned to the company, I went straight to the CEO's office and reported the events of the meeting and Tom's harassment and misconduct. The CEO immediately called Tom in and gave him a long, severe reprimand. Tom was put on administrative leave, and the CEO conducted a thorough investigation the next day. As a result, not only Tom's embezzlement and poor work attitude, but also his harassment and intimidation of other employees came to light. Tom was promptly dismissed, and the company sued him for embezzlement, leaving him with massive debts. His life spiraled out of control as soon as he was fired, and his wife filed for divorce. All he was left with was an unnecessarily large house with an outstanding mortgage. Tom tried to find a new job to repay his debts, but his age made it difficult, and he eventually gave up. He started working part-time jobs, but was looked down upon and harassed by his bosses and colleagues, who called him incompetent. He found it hard to learn new jobs and move from one place to another. But everywhere he went, he was just labeled incompetent. Now, he works on an assembly line in a factory, struggling alone to pay off the mortgage and his debts. I felt it was a good lesson for him and hoped he would lead a better life in the future. As for me, I spent the next year as a regular employee, learning the ropes from senior colleagues and new bosses, contributing to the company. Recently, I successfully became the CEO of Thompson Securities and took on my role as the new leader. While I was working as an employee, news of the business meeting incident had somehow leaked, and it was quickly revealed that I was the next CEO candidate. Even so, the other employees continued to treat me as a new employee, without trying to curry favor. This made my work environment comfortable, and I was grateful to them. We resumed business dealings with Nathan's bank around the time Tom was dismissed, and our relationship was successfully restored. Feeling relieved, I quickly focused on implementing reforms based on the improvements I noticed over the past year, enhancing the company's environment. As a result, I gained the trust and respect of the employees, and the workplace atmosphere improved significantly. As I continued to produce results and move forward with my employees, my leadership was increasingly recognized, giving me a strong sense of fulfillment. Looking ahead, I am not married and have no children, so there is no immediate candidate for the next CEO. Therefore, I have already identified and started mentoring several potential CEO candidates from within the company. While the previous CEO's family had run the business for generations, I believe it's better to seek cooperation from other talents to ensure the company's long-term sustainability. Among the future CEO candidates I've identified are some outstanding new employees. I hope that these future leaders will endure my guidance and further improve the company. Seeing their efforts motivated me not to slack off. I plan to continue dedicating myself fully to the company and fulfilling my role as CEO.